Hi there, we're Innocent Roses, and this is our early deliverable. In this presentation, you're going to have Rose John and Innocent Musiaka doing the presentation. Otherwise, the two other of our team members are Derek Lee and Jeff Solberg. All right, we'll just go ahead and give you a little bit of a background here. So Valencia is a company that is built from ground up by two brothers, Patrick and Frank. It is a state-qualified highway contractor based in the state of Indiana. The company has benefited from the founders' prior industry experience coupled with extremely low overheads from their operations. The major client is the state of Indiana Highway Division, which accounts for 90% of the business. In a good year, the company would have 4 to 5 road building projects. Now, kind of moving on to the challenges that facing Valencia, we noticed that there are a couple of them. The main one is actually keeping compliance to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC, presentation standards. This is an important part because failure to have the qualification disqualifies the company from bidding on the state projects. And the qualifications are 10% of the job has to be done by significant minority women or other specified minority in that criteria. You're also facing an issue with keeping track of their employees' payroll. They also have an issue with maintaining the records for their property, plant, and equipment. And this is going to help them a lot once they have a database management system because they'll be able to keep track of what equipment is being used where and by what employee. Also, the database management system will also help them keep track of their service records. And the bottom line here is the exponential growth experienced by Valencia is the main cause of the need of a database management system. So the solutions that will be brought by this system, the system will help in solving anomalies like insertion, manipulation, deletion. The database management system would also help in reducing redundancy and would also ease in communication within the business and keep better track of employees' activities and engagements. Now, for us to be able to come up with an ideal database management system, we had to figure out what information to be included.
Thank you, Innocent. So from there, we would include the earning per skilled employee, the payroll, the job site, equipment, material, tools, suppliers, zip for zip code, then assignments, the pay rate, the estimated hours per skill, the tool tracking, and then the inventory. And we found that there were 4 associative entities for a database, and that would be your payroll, your estimated hours worked per skill, assignment, and your tool tracking. Now I'm going to talk about the table types and then go into the relationship and the benefits. So this is earnings per skill that pulls your employee ID and your skill classification. So basically pulling your employee and then their skill classification and coming up with the total of that particular skill, and then adding on times in by the rate, and that totals your pay. And then your payroll pulls your employee ID and the date, and then it pulls all your skill categories and then totals them all together to total your gross earning, and then your tax, and then your net earning. And then your next table is your employee table, and that contains your employee ID, which is the main ID for most of some of the other tables. And this one holds the sex and the ethnicity, as well as if it's a supervisor or not, and all the other details of this employee to make this whole entire database work together. And then this table is your assignment table. This pulls your employee ID, your project ID, and your skill classification all together. And that should equal your hours worked for just that particular project. And this one and table, it would be considered an assignment. This table is your pay rate, which is your skill classification and the rate for that particular skill. Then this is your estimated hours per skill, which pulls from your project ID, basically the project you worked at, and then the skill classification, which is your skill that you were performing at that project location, which you could probably potentially have multiple skills categories that you were probably doing there, but that would estimate your total hours overall for that one particular classification skill set, and then it would then estimate how many hours is still needed by the minority and gender. And then this here is your tool tracking, and that one it pulls your item ID and your employee ID and your project ID, and then that kind of links you to which employee and what tool they used and where the project came from, and then when they checked it out and when it checked the tool back in. And then this is your zip table, which is basically your zip code containing your city and state. And here's your job site table, which contains your project ID. And that one should, detail your project name and if it's a state project and which employees work there, and if it's completed and inspected, and more details about the project location. And then this table is your supplier with your vendor ID, and it contains basically information about your supplier. And then inventory, it contains the item ID, primary key, and basically just details about that inventory. And this actually inventory is a super type, and it has 3 other subtypes, which is equipment, material, and tools. So equipment basically is the equipment that you're using, like a vehicle of some sort, and it contains tracking of your maintenance dates and your next maintenance date. So basically making sure that you keep things in line. And this is your material. It also contains the primary key ID, and it counts the materials, the cost, and which supplier it comes from. And this is your tool, which is also a subtype, and it just contains the type of tool. Now here is a image of the relationships of the whole entire database. And we're going to focus on one side first. Here is your earnings per skill, and you can see that you can have 0 to many assignments, but you can only have one earning per skill. And then the earnings per skill can have one employee, and the employee can have many earnings per skill, so they could have different skills. They don't have to just have one skill. Based on the company, some employees do have multiple skills, and then for earnings per skill, you can only have one pay rate per that one skill, but the pay rate can have multiple earnings per skill. And then you have your earnings per skill only having one payroll, but the payroll can have 0 to many earnings per skill. And then the payroll can actually have only one employee, but the employee can have 0 to many payrolls. So you can see that it pulls in your employee and then all your earnings per skill here to get your gross. And then if you look at your employee has 0 to many assignments, so they can work on many assignments. But the assignments can only have one employee, and the employee can have 0 to many tool tracking, so they can be in many of the tool tracking of whichever item they borrowed in projects they were in, and whatever, and they checked out, whichever they checked out and checked back in. And then the employee can also have only one zip code. And then if you look at assignment can have only one pay rate, but the pay rate can have 0 to many assignments, and the assignment can only have one job site, but the job site can have a lot of assignments, 0 to many assignments for employees. And then if you look at your pay rate, the pay rate only has the pay rate has 0 to many estimated hours per skill, but the hours per skill only can have one pay rate. So one pay rate goes into this, and you're only estimating one pay skill classification, getting its total hours, and basing that to get your minority and gender estimation to meet the requirement. And then you have your job site. The job site should have only one zip code, but the zip code can have 0 to many job site, and the job site can also has 0 to many tool tracking, because there's obviously lots of job site locations, and they can have different types of tools, and then the tools can only have one job site location. So now from there, we could look at supplier. So the supplier can only have one zip code, but zip code can have many suppliers. Supplier can have many materials, but the material can only have one supplier. So you can have lots of materials coming from one supplier. And then if we look here, we can see that there's an inventory within item ID, primary key, and that one is a super type, and it has sub types, and this is an equipment, material, and tool. So you can see that based on what inventory you have, you could either have equipment, which has maintenance requirements, and making sure that you have the next maintenance updated, and also keeping track of what was the last one done and what type of ownership you have there. And then if you have material, you have counts of how many materials and the pricing along with your supplier. And then if you have tools, then it would keep track of what type of tool. So from there, from this inventory, it would then track to many, 0 to many of this tool tracing. So basically traces those inventory. But then the tool tracing can only have one inventory. And that would be that. There. Now let's go to the next slide. And what are the benefits? Well, you could save lots of hours of data entry. So once you enter in your entity attributes, then you just go on to entering your employee and all the other details, and then you let the database automate the whole system to capture the data that you need. Um, and then it enables you to manipulate, enter, or delete data at easier and faster rate, and you can pull reports, especially for the EEOC standards, to make sure that you are meeting your requirements. And then obviously it enables you to track your EEOC and your payroll, making sure that you're also applying the correct taxes, because you are um, tracking all your skill categories and adding them all together properly, and then finally adding your taxes. And then you're also tracking your maintenance, making sure that they're updated, they're current, and when's your next one. So you know when to set up your maintenance plan, and then tracking your tools, making sure that your tools are in the right location and they're not all over, and you're saving tons of money. Just, be more organized and keeping people accountable for their tools, and keeping things up to date. And the company really needs this improvement in order to stay in business. So this would be a great database to keep the company from going under, and allowing them to grow to a bigger, more successful, sustainable company.